everyone. I'm Octavia Marsh. I'm the Executive Director of Hanover Cares, and today I have Sarah Birckhead, who's the Regional Coordinator of Virginia Department of Health's Tobacco Control Program. Since the pandemic began, we've heard many different things about vaping and whether or not that actually increases the risk of vulnerability of COVID-19. So today we're just going to have a quick chat about some myths and also the facts with Sarah. So Sarah, what can you tell us about the research that's been coming out surrounding vaping and COVID-19?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today, Octavia. I'm happy to be with you and to talk about these important topics. In particular, there was one study that came out this summer that interviewed 13 to 24-year-olds and asked them a lot of different COVID questions, like whether they were sheltering in place, if they had had any symptoms similar to COVID-19, and if they had been tested for COVID-19. And what this study found is that for ever e-cigarette users, and this was again, youth and young adults, they were 5 times as likely to have had a positive coronavirus test. And for those that used cigarettes and e-cigarettes, they were up to 7 times as likely to have had a positive coronavirus test. And so, like almost everything around coronavirus, we do need more research, but it does kind of make sense when you really break it down for the things that we already know about vaping. We know that vaping can damage your lungs and your respiratory system. We know that vaping can weaken your immune system. And then, of course, you know, we've talked about washing hands and people were washing groceries for a while, you know, at all the things of even the flu and passing on viruses, how important hand washing is. And when you're vaping, you're thinking about that hand-mouth connection. You're touching, you know, your mouth a lot. And so that could have impacted those rates of coronavirus. Or maybe it was an exposure issue, especially with youth. We know that there's a lot of sharing of vaping and vape products. And you're not wearing a mask when you're doing that. You're inhaling everything around you. And then you're also exhaling really strongly. And so it's most likely all of those factors together that really showed that increased risk in getting a positive coronavirus test.
That's some great insight, Sarah. We also often hear about people who vape or use e-cigarettes who associate their use with stress. And we know, especially during the pandemic, everyone is stressed. Yeah. So do you have any insight on the increased stress during the pandemic as it relates to vaping usage? And maybe are there certain populations that are more at risk?
Yeah, you know, I was just talking with some researchers at VCU who have been looking specifically at this. And so as that data comes out, I'll be sure to share it back with you and with Hanover Cares. I haven't seen the data around whether there has been an increase in vaping during the pandemic, but we do know that people use tobacco products, including vapes, at higher rates when they're stressed or when they're depressed. So we are assuming that that's the case. Anecdotally, we have heard of a lot of people really turning to smoking and vaping as a way to handle their increased stress during uncertain times. And overall, people with mental health concerns or behavioral health conditions use tobacco products at higher rates and use more often. So whether they smoke more or vape more on average than other people. So that is a population that we are especially concerned about during the pandemic, as we always are, of course, but they're at higher risk during the pandemic. But there's also been deliberate marketing that could reach any young person. I don't know if you heard this, Octavia, but puff bars, which are no longer selling in the US, but anyone scrolling social media may have seen that they had an ad at the beginning of the pandemic that showed an image of a bedroom and promoted Puff Bar as a solo break and a way to stay sane from back-to-back Zoom calls, parental texts, and WFH, or work from home stress. So this is not marketed at me or someone working from home. And so it really is a concern that any young person, may have been targeted during this time with advertising that tells them that vaping is a way to release that stress, and a way to escape.
Wow. The media and the marketing is just always so interesting. But with that, we always want to give some hope and encourage anyone that may be listening. So especially with more teens and young adults vaping now, what are some tips that you can share to encourage our parents or anyone that may be listening or experiencing this in their home right now?
Yeah, I'll give a couple, and then I'd love to hear from you as well as one of my favorite prevention experts that I get a chance to work with. But I would really want parents and guardians to know, you're not alone. There are tools to help both the young person in your life who may be using these products, and then tools to help support you as well. And to really keep an eye out for possible use, to not just say that's not my kid or that's just nicotine, it's no big deal. We really want parents to know what these products look like. If you Google, vapes and e-cigarettes, they come in all shapes and sizes, and new products are coming out every day that contain nicotine salts that may not look like a traditional cigarette, or even the first generation of vapes. They don't look the same. Some look like the USB, like the Juul, and others look like drops you'd put in your water. They are a lot of different shapes. So keep an eye out for those different products, and really let the young people in your life know your stance on vaping. Be really clear and have that conversation, not just once, but many times and over, and really with a curious heart and with listening, and not with judgment, to really ask your child, what they're seeing among their friends or at school or, in the neighborhood, and really have those honest conversations with them. And most importantly, I would encourage people, if they themselves use any tobacco products, if you smoke, use cigars, if you vape, I would encourage you to quit. It's really good for your health, but it's also an example to your child to show that even though nicotine is a true addiction, there is help in quitting that addiction, and that you yourself can do it. And that's a really big example for our young people.
Such incredible encouragement tips, Sarah. I think I would just add really just 3 ways to encourage parents, especially, is to just be engaged, to know what's going on. And just like Sarah said, having frequent conversations. And we talk so much about that in the coalition, but it really is important to have those frequent conversations. And we always say to meet your child where they are. Sarah did mention about curiosity. And so I think that was an important point, because kids are curious and they have questions. And as adults, we should answer those questions and answer them truthfully. And so I think it's in those moments that we can find those teachable moments and engage some conversation while doing so. And I think one key thing that we can always start with, I always say lead with education. And so we might not know about puff bars or all the different and various products that are entering the market, but what we do know is about brain development. And brain development is all about that our brains continue developing until about age 25. And so especially with our youth and young adult population, we can just simply share that we have concern and interest all about protecting their brain and their brain development. And so I think, Sarah, you even mentioned about expectations. And so setting those family expectations and consequences, I think that can actually strengthen and form some mutual agreement in your household. And I just want to encourage everyone too, if you have not already, visit the Hanover Cares website. Our coalition members collectively have created a wonderful document on e-cigarettes that's all about starting a conversation. And that's just a great starting point to get some tips on how to have this conversation.
That's great.
So Sarah, I have a couple more questions for you. So we know that teens and even young adults are often curious, as we just mentioned. So maybe they've tried vaping, or they've realized the harm of vaping, or they just have other general reasons that they may want to quit. So what are some cessation tips that we can share to encourage and support quitting for those who may have already initiated tobacco usage?
Yeah, that's a really important question. So thank you for asking it, Octavia. You just mentioned the growing adolescent brain, and especially those young brains, they're more prone to addiction, and nicotine can prime the brain for other addictions as well. And so really addressing this and realizing it's not just something you can tell someone to knock off, like, what are you thinking? Just stop doing it. To realize that these products, especially the new vapes that have nicotine salts, are really high in nicotine. And that adolescent brain is prone to addiction. So it's going to be harder to quit, possibly. So to really look for the tools that we know can help them. So if you know someone who is using these products and is interested in quitting, we really encourage you to call 1-800-QUIT-NOW, which is the free tobacco and nicotine cessation quit line. It's also online, quitnow.net/Virginia, and it's for anyone 13 and over. And even parents or adults who are trying to support someone in quitting, they can call too for tips on the best ways to quit. And what's great about that is most people, have access to a phone, can call when it's convenient, and it's open 24/7. And then also can really get personalized help, because the reasons one person starts using these products may not be the reason someone else starts, and what's going to motivate someone to stop may look different from their friend or their cousin that also tried to quit. So these quick coaches on the other end of 1-800-QUIT-NOW can really walk someone through how often they use and what's going to be the best motivator, whether it's saving money, if it's they want to run faster in the sports that they participate in, or just realize it's really not good for them. Whatever it is, they can build off that motivation. And then there's another great resource out of the Truth Initiative that is specifically for youth and young adults called This Is Quitting. So anyone can go to thisisquitting.com, or you can text Ditch Juul, DITCHJUUL, to 88709. And even though it says Ditch Juul, they started that when Juul really became popular with youth and young adults. But they'll ask you in that texting cessation program what product you use. And so if you use a Soren, they will change the language and they'll look at your age, and they will really target the messages that will relate to the young person that is using whatever product they're using. And so that's a really great service as well. And then Truth Initiative has a separate texting program for parents. So they can text QUIT to 202-899-7550. And then the parent or the guardian can get text messages designed specifically for parents to ask questions and to relate and really talk to their youth about using these products and to help support them in non-judgmental ways, like we've already talked about. But those are great resources. Hopefully we can add them below or in some messages so people can get to them directly.
Yeah, we'll link them here on the video. Now, Sarah, just one clarifying point. All of these resources are free?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. They're all free.
Awesome. So many great resources to support anyone at any stage that they may be in. So Sarah, I just want to thank you for your time today and sharing all of these wonderful resources and information with us today.
Thank you for having me and for all the work you're doing in our communities.
Thank you. And if there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments of the video, or of course, contact us on our website at hanover-cares.org. And Sarah and I will be sure to get your questions answered.